Okay, all right. So we might spend just a few moments waiting to see if anyone else rocks up for the live stream. Um, Welcome to this live stream with John Gillies and myself. We're going to be talking through the work that we did for the last 2 weeks, which was mainly sort of about this intersection between filmic traditions, I suppose, a little bit of theatre, and bringing that into some of the tools that I've been working with for creating things in VR. I'll just go through my checklist because I have it here for a reason. So while we're waiting for people to rock up, I'll say welcome. Yeah, it's great that that we have this facility to live stream and record what we've got. So we can do our big spiels and have our big chat and demonstrate what we've got, and it will be recorded in perpetuity so people can come back and see it. It's a little bit more valuable, I'd say, than a different experience in an opening. All those conversations that sort of get lost to the wind in an opening, we can sort of have here, and people can go back and have a bit of a listen and ask questions as we're going. It can work quite well. So just bear in mind that even though we've been doing this for a while, it's still a bit of an experiment. So
Very much so.
If there's anything wrong, well, John's just been sort of audience to all of the configuration of all of the different ways of getting the sound coming through the Oculus headset and also through this headset, recorded on the computer and all that sort of stuff. And even though getting to the point where it's becoming a bit of a regular routine of doing the live streams, it's still fairly involved. Every so often some bit of software will update and it'll go a bit funny. So with that in mind, if the levels are funny, we're sort of relying on you to give some sort of feedback if there is something wrong with the recording.
In the chat is really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any questions also in the chat, please fire away at any time.
And yep, so we will throughout, we might not respond to questions immediately. We might sort of get stuck in sort of running around and doing our demos and talking about certain bits and pieces, but we'll come back to the chat and we'll check that out. I'll just hold for a minute and we will come back. Just going to chase up and okay, so we've got the sound working, making sure that the connection is done. So Chris, good to see you connected, and let us know as our live human test guinea pig whether the sound levels at this point are good. If there's anything that's not working out. The general format is very informal, these live streams. What we're going to do is have the ability to jump in, and I can mirror what is going on in the headset, so we can stream that. We'll talk through the work in the headset, and then we can take questions. We'll just chat about some of the, if you'd like, some of the technical parts of what we were doing and some of the concept parts, and have a bit of an artist talk, sort of talking about the concept behind the work and things that worked out, some of the experiments that we did, because this is I'm sort of focusing on experimentation.
Yeah, just jump in there. This is not a completed work. There's no completed work there. This is a work in progress, and it's trying things out. So trying things out to see what the result would be, because I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, like, experimental in every sense of the word, throwing things at the wall. Some things work, some things don't. Some things are sort of proof of concept. So there's one main sort of bulk of the work, and then there's a few different example scenes of different things that we weren't able to bring in, but we had a bit of a play around with them and sort of found them valuable.
I could easily keep going doing this for, because I would tackle it differently and things would be different, and it shows there's so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always nice to, I mean, like, if you end up at the end of it with more questions and more ideas, and that's kind of nice. I'd like to acknowledge Australia Council for the funding support for this project. We wouldn't be able to do it without that support, so thank you very much. I would also like to point out that this is one of many live streams that we're doing, so if you enjoy this, if you find it interesting, all of the previous live streams that we've done are archived on the Facebook page and also on YouTube. So you can check that out. And the next set of artists that we'll be working with will be progressively archived as well. So keep an eye on the Facebook page. We'll announce the next live streams, and all of that sort of archive of videos will be put up there for you to have a look at.
I'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal land in which we are. We are in a real place here.
Absolutely.
We're in St. Peter's, not St. Petersburg, as I keep. My brain keeps.
Well, it's a bit lefty, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's St. Peter's.
And even, I mean, the virtuality is an interesting thing. Concept. A lot of people are doing Zoom live streams, and it is nice to appreciate the legacy of the lands that you're on, and the fact that you're actually present somewhere. You can find out more information about the VR studios from either the Facebook page, Tactical Space Lab, or from our website, tacticalspace.org. I will, without further ado, introduce John Gillies, who is this studio's resident artist. John Gillies, I know you from your most recent work. That was presented in a couple of different ways, actually. It was a physical install as well as a more traditional screening of a film. But, well, I'm just going to open it up. So I'd like to welcome John Gillies, and we can get stuck into demonstrating the project. I don't know if you'd like to. I always feel a bit uncomfortable trying to sum up people's practice. Yeah. Given that everyone is in their own position, their own idea of where everything is. But if you'd like to spend a moment talking about what your sort of disciplines and capacities are in your work.
Yeah, I guess I'm multidisciplinary. That horrible word. And I'm interested in crossing the work that you're referring to, Vidkatsin Malinovsky, Cinematic Sounds in 23 Scenes, is kind of a film with a play within it. So, and it was shown at Sydney Film. But other work I do is more installation-y, more abstract. I also work with sound, I work with music. And I show as a visual artist. I very much see myself as a visual artist, working with it. It's my training, but I use these other forms with at various times.
Do you want to talk about the more in the sort of departure from? I mean, coming from a visual arts discipline. It's not really a departure for you, but that presentation that you did with the installation was really interesting.
Which one?
With that work, sort of in a spatial context.
Yeah, I haven't actually, Vidkatsin Malinovsky, I haven't actually installed it in the right way that I want to install it. Okay. So it's still to be seen. Well, hopefully I was going to see it this year, but as we know, it cancelled this year.
Okay.
So it's that works very much experiential, where the audience is inside a space which is like a train carriage, which is like also like a cinema. So it's drawing analogy, and they're surrounded by.
We've just been told that we've stopped transmitting. What can we do about that? Need more people really to pop up. Well, everything looks green on this side. And it looks live.
Can anybody else hear us?
We've got 9 people listening, so there should be an opportunity. Let's comment. Are we still live? It's interesting point of departure whether Chris's internet has gone or our internet has gone. I can still see you. Okay, great.
Oh, Cameron. Hi, Cameron.
Okay, this is volume. This is a volume issue because it's got a.
I shall speak more loudly. Okay, I don't know where I was up to. So I guess the installation thing is very immersive. Use that word, and something. I come from the point of view of making my work of what does the audience feel, what does the audience think, and what experience are they going through, and I make my work around how people read these things or how they experience these things. So I guess that's an interesting crossover to this kind of technology. It's not that far really, actually, in a way.
I mean, at some point I'd love to talk, because I got quite excited about exploring a nice install context for this particular work. But what I will do is I will jump in to the headset and who wants how about I go first? I walk around, you can guide me to look around different areas, and you can talk about what I'm seeing through that work.
Okay,
So I'll just start it.
Because obviously everyone else is seeing that in 2 dimensions, so it's a very different experience, obviously.
Yep. So that's something that we will have to a little bit of suspension of disbelief in terms of what the experience of standing there in front of the different figures actually looks like. Let's see.
So I've got a few messages here which says people can't see it.
Okay.
No video visual. I really hope it's working out. Okay. Can people see us as well as hear us?
My internet is good.
Okay. It could be your end.
I suspect other people's better. Okay, good. Yeah. Just if anything goes wrong, and I will write this in a message just as a thing. I think a lot of people have been having problems with internet in the last few days.
I certainly have.
Luckily, I'm locked into the fastest possible, screamingly fast tortoise speed NBN connection here. Not future-proof at all, but at least sort of substantial.
Thanks, Claire.
Okay, cool. If anything goes with the video, give us a yell. Cool. All right. I'm going to jump into this. John, let me know if the visuals come up.
Yeah. Okay.
Where I need to.
Yeah, that's okay. That's meant to be blank at this stage. So Joss has just left this area and moved down to a larger area, which is about 6 meters round, which is surrounded by black curtains. And he's put on the headset. And you will see what he is seeing, a representation of what he's seeing anyway.
Is that working? Can you see anything?
Yeah, the background's meant to be black at this moment. We can't see anything yet.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Is this the place?
Okay. He's in.
So those sprites are a little bit subtle then.
They've
for
left the light on.
Oh, I see.
Is there anybody else outside?
So,
If there was, we'd know by now.
I'm sure you're right. But you can't be too sure. Not the way things are at the moment.
Do you hear that? Wait, did
so
you
this
hear
should
it?
be able to hear the audio.
I'm listening.
Okay, they can hear the whispers
I'm listening.
and they can see it.
And I won't go until I've heard it.
Can you hear
Heard it all.
Can you hear the dialogue at home?
Are you all right? Or should I leave you?
You can't leave all this behind. You know that.
Sure.
I'm listening. Did you hear that again? Now I'm here.
John, can you see
I
if
should
the
leave you. But we both know that
volume
you
on
can't.
the Oculus microphone is going up on OBS?
We come in here.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We see the light is on. We look
So what
around.
I'm seeing here,
see
this
there's
is
nobody
shot
there.
with a VR 180
Wait.
camera.
Yes.
So actually, even though
We
it's
come
hard
in
to
again.
tell
We
from
do
what you're
this
seeing, this
all
back has
over
a
again.
depth element to it.
I don't know.
And also, it's much less
I'm just
jerky
telling
than
you.
what you're seeing at home. So you're seeing a very jerky
So why
version of
am
what's
I
happening.
Here with
So when you walk around,
You tell
you're
me.
drawn by the
telling
whispers
you anything.
to
Well, not here,
and
anyway.
some visual elements which you can't
I'm
really
still
see
hearing it though.
to
Really?
to an area, and then you these figures appear,
You're still
and there's a
here.
figure in front of you, can't see at the moment, and a figure behind, and they have a dialogue. And you can listen all the way through that dialogue to the end of that sequence. It has or you can move off towards another area of whispers, and then you will enter another dialogue between two characters or whatever they are. We don't know.
So it should run a little bit smoother. There's heaps of things going on the computer at the moment. It's streaming and it was recording.
Yeah.
And I've just turned off the recording. So this should run a bit smoother.
That's a bit better.
Yeah.
This is the place. They've left the lights on. Is there anybody else outside? If there was, we'd know by
I've not
now.
seen this one before. This is clear and clear.
So
I'm sure
some of the
right.
performers are here, I think.
But you can't be
Claire
too
Grant.
sure. Not the way things are at the
performer.
moment. Did you hear that? Wait. Did you hear
Now
it
I've got
again?
a shout out to all of the performers. Meg Clark,
I'm
who you saw
listening, but I
before.
won't go until I've heard
Claire
it.
Grant, who's on screen now. Pollyanna
All
Nowicki.
right.
Gideon Peyton Griffiths.
Do you want to talk about this sort of interstitial space of tuning into?
Yeah, so we have. It's a bit hard for you to hear all of the dialogue, but the dialogue's about being in a space. Is this the place? Is the first thing that first person says, and it's kind of a self-referential dialogue. It's kind of interesting at the moment because all the theatres are shut down and performance is shut down, so it's kind of making a performance space within the headset that can be experienced one by one. So the script, the dialogue that's being spoken is kind of inspired by the situation that we are in the moment, which we're in a place, and I've left it very open. There's the performers direct their questions to their lines to you, because you are physically placed between two characters with the headset on. So if you turn around, you'll see the other character who starts to speak. So you are implicated into the work by being so close to them. And that was something I was interested in exploring in this work, intimacy in performance.
I jump into the
Yeah.
Is this the
Yep.
place? Yeah.
to give this, and
This is the
you've
place. They've left the
in
lights
theory, all of the combinations of different performers would be
Is there anybody else outside? If there was, we'd know by now.
randomized
Yeah.
and sort of combinatorially sort
Yeah.
of involved, so everyone could sort of perform against each other.
Yeah.
We've got this sort of locked into a few different videos at the moment, but
This is a demo, so it's a proof of concept, as you said.
Is this the place?
And
Yeah.
the same this is Meg
This is the
Clark.
place.
The same performers
The
appear.
lights on.
Pollyanna Nowicki.
Is there anybody else outside?
The same performers
If there was,
appear a number
we'd
of
know by
times,
now.
but always saying the same
sure
dialogue.
you're
So they're
right.
kind of caught
you
in
can't
this
be
loop,
too
this
sure.
endless loop of repetition,
The way things
of
are at the
repeating
moment.
the same dialogue about being in
hear
this
that?
in this place.
and should we talk about the sound in the two different bits? So another thing that people probably can't fully appreciate, or they may be more so than you at the moment, if people are wearing headphones to listen to this,
Yeah.
is the sound spatialization. So in this whisper sort of thing, this particular space, we did a lot of work experimenting with different ways of spatializing sound. So we've got a few different demos that we can show maybe later on of recording with a binaural head microphone setup. We did something with tracked sound, with real-time tracking to move sound through space. And for these ones, we have these sprites here that are they weren't originally sort of fundamental to the design, but we wanted to have something where you would be involved in navigating through the space drawn by the sound. So one thing that's sort of not often really made a big deal out of, people are more sort of focused on the visuals generally, but using the VR headset is a really interesting tool for building really interesting soundscapes, so spatialized soundscapes that you can actually move through and move in between different sound sources. Could be totally dark, and in theory you could sort of locate and find the sources of different sounds. This visual element was here just sort of as a little bit of an augmentation to finding the different points of dialogue just on the basis of sound. Just to give a little bit of extra sort of visual feedback for what you're hearing as well, and sort of guide. It's kind of interesting. I took a point of reference from from another work where they were trying to represent conversations, a spatial element to a conversation. So it's taking the volume of the audio and creating this little sort of sprite thing that gives it a kind of sense of performed agency, actually, as the conversation is going and the words are being spoken. There's sort of these little points of brightness that I think works quite well.
Yeah.
But throughout all of this, a major focus, as well as the VR camera, is the sound. And this is using this sort of acoustic model inside here. Different things are going to my left ear and my right ear. It's modeling resonance in the space, in this totally fictional space, in a way that it helps me find where these sounds are coming from. And if I jump into one of the videos, oops, I just walked into a curtain. Where's the nearest one? Yeah, this one. If you go into one of these conversations, then the sound of the characters sounds like it's coming from where they should be at that distance. So it's kind of an interesting experience to have them feeling through the sound.
For me, one of the most interesting things about this technology is the sound.
I'm sure you're right.
And the sound to actually
but you can't
lead
be too
you
sure.
and
not
to
the way things are
create your experience of a piece. Now remember, what you're seeing here is not what you would see in the headsets. This is really jerky, what you're seeing at home. What you're seeing in the... if you had the headset on, it's much smoother. And it's very much a confrontation with a person, one-to-one, eyeball to eyeball. And they're speaking to you and also to the person behind, which is that person, which is the same person.
Behind. You know that. Sure.
Is there any questions or anything that people have got? I could also run through some of the other examples.
Thanks, Marek.
Early in the game to run through some of our other demonstrations.
Yeah. I'm still hearing it though. And I guess it's interesting. The other thing I was interested to, as well as sound, is that it's a performance space, and this seems like trying to create a space for performance, and performance not in the theatre as in a proscenium stage, but in 360 degrees. So it's always been a dream of kind of theatre and experimental theatre to be able to work totally within 360 degrees, up, down, below, behind. You've got a picture of, I don't know, doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. So this is a picture of Walter Gropius's 1926 total theatre plan. I don't think it was ever built. No, it wasn't ever built. But it's an idea of theatre being all around in 360 degrees around the audience, and it totally reconfigurable. The elements can change, etc. This is kind of a dream of how an audience could be in relation to performers, and this technology that we're exploring here has some of these elements of this ability to be intimate and to be constantly reconfiguring the arrangement between the performers and the audience.
And also, in theory, even though what we've got at the moment is sort of pre-compiled elements that are going on, you could have, for example, performers who are performing to a VR camera that is, or motion capture or something, where it's actually a live performance where they're responding to.
It could be live, yeah. And I guess there used to be a space in Sydney called Performance Space, and every 3 weeks a different group of people would come in and reconfigure that space and put on another performance where the relationship of the audience and the performers was different each time. Here, this is a kind of a clunkier kind of process because, you know, we have to make these things. But I thought here's a kind of the beginnings of a performance space that I could keep building on and adding other elements to and adding other layers and levels that you go through, and it's could be a really quite an intense experience. There's also something interesting that's going on here when you're confronted with a full figure in front of you of a person. It's very much, you know, it's kind of banal, but it's kind of a little bit of the shock of like when cinema first happened, when we were confronted, well, before our time, but confronted with images of people, real size or larger than life. There's that same kind of, we've kind of forgotten that because we've grown up with cinema and television, blah, blah, blah. But to be confronted with a figure in front of you, really close to you, speaking to you, you know it's not real, but it's really real. And it's kind of there's a bit of a shock in this technology there, which is I find really interesting.
Well, it's also slightly worrying because there's a lot of projects that are focusing on this idea of VR as an empathic tool, and there's I don't know whether I'm just far more cynical than a lot of other people, but if you remember at a certain point, photojournalism was doing things to document famine and just horrible humanitarian crises. And these images were coming out that people were emotionally responding very strongly to because they were shocking images. And then people became their emotional response became fatigued on the basis of that. So that aesthetic, that presentation of something no longer gave them the same emotional response. And I think it's very easy to imagine, or at least as lightly without sort of critically engaging with it, that experiences that at the moment we are in awe of and have a particular emotional response to, we will become totally desensitized to them in a way which might mean that if you see a real human, you know, you're physically present with a real person, some of that experience of desensitization in VR might actually make you less sensitized. Actually, it will change, a sort of in opposition to a lot of the research around projects of VR as an empathic tool. There are business training tools that teach you how to fire an old man who is crying on the basis of you firing them in the perfect way. So effectively what that's doing is training your emotional response, training you to not be at the whim of your emotional response. It's already happened. First few years of consumer headsets, that's a very, very good example of the other side of the coin. Should I jump into the other examples?
Yeah, because we're about halfway through. So.
Well, we can go over a little bit over time at some.
Yes.
Let's do it.
So I guess the other source for the text, which you don't get from what you did, is I'm not interested in telling stories. I'm more interested in relationships between things and ideas, and the audience and those ideas. And so one of the kind of key kind of ideas in a lot of modernist cinema is people trapped in a room for no reason. I sort of, we were in Australia, not complete lockdown. That was sort of came up like these films or plays that had groups of people in a locked up situation, and they didn't explain why they were there, and that seemed like a really kind of important kind of story. And I'm kind of riffing on that. So probably the first example I found was Sartre's play No Exit. I think it's 47 or 48, and that kind of inspired this a little bit. But there's Buñuel's film Exterminating Angel. There's the Teshikahara's Woman of the Dunes. There's Michael Haneke's The Seventh Continent. Um, uh, Lanthimos recently, the Dogtooth, another example in a way, and there's many others. So it seemed like a trope that was kind of a really important one in kind of in our culture, and I thought I would use this technology to extend that idea, and that's kind of the source of the text. You haven't seen it all the way through. You need to experience it to understand that, but that's where it's coming from. How are we going down there, Josh?
Good. I think you can see what I'm seeing at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Just I'd love to chat a little bit more about the concept of the work and what sort of relationships get set up by the framing of particular, the fact that we're in a fairly novel bit of technology. There's a particular way of reading that experience. And the sort of conversations that you're having within that. I'd love to chat about that. For the moment, I've just took a bunch of the experiments that we had done around spatialized sound and things like that, and I just tagged them on so that I can move through them and we can demonstrate some of the sort of activities that we were doing in the run-up to figure out interesting ways of using the VR headset. So I thought it would be good to sort of run through there. There's going to be some sound in the headset that hopefully won't be too jarring against me talking. Okay, so this example was us first testing the Ambisonics Sound.
It was a cold night, and it does look like reactor for a Chernobyl nuclear reactor, but this is the space that Josh is actually in now.
Oh, for some reason the audio isn't playing on this one, which is annoying.
That's the main thing.
In the headset, so what we've done at the moment, all of this is built to the headset, and for the sake of doing the live stream, we're actually running it from the PC. So some things are a little bit different. This does work in the headset, and we can put that online for people with a headset to have a go of as well. What is going on in here was just us testing ambisonic sound recording. So you have a microphone that records 4 different channels, and it gives a way of capturing sort of a 3D soundscape. And this worked really well. Depending on which way you're looking, it sounds like John is talking into your left or right ear or coming from different directions.
Hey Josh, maybe don't move so fast. Maybe.
What? Okay. Yeah, just for the video.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one, hopefully the other ones will work. I can't actually hear the audio, so it might be. Was the audio?
There's nothing on the desktop audio.
I need to read the audio. I think this disconnecting and reconnecting might have given a problem with that. I'll just jump back into our start experience and have a bit of a play with the audio. This is the technical. Is my microphone?
Your microphone's working fine.
Okay, I'll just do a little bit of a tweak. I think it's necessary to pay a little bit of a sacrifice to the gods of technical failure, I think, for these live streams. Otherwise, it hasn't really happened.
So I guess the other thing, I'll just say something while you're doing that. I guess the other thing about the piece that we showed a little bit before with the performers is that there's a kind of melancholy built into it, where the performers aren't really live. We're not really in a real space, and that's kind of part of that encounter. And it's there's a kind of a melancholy about our performance being shut down basically in this particular time. This is all that we can do. This is the only possibility that exists.
Okay, I think.
Okay. Just tell me when. This is the place. The lights on. Shh. They've left the lights. I can't hear anything, but it says its desktop audio is working. Yes, this is the place. Did you hear that? Like it's upside down. Did you hear that? On the screen here, anyway. Where? Over here. But this is just an experiment. We were just experimenting with lots of different things in the last 2 weeks. Most of which actually didn't make it into what you saw before, but just trying out things. Like I said before, there's so many ideas and so many other ways of exploring, and kind of worked out some of the language issues. And if you do this, this is what happens, not that. No, it's not. Yeah, I think we've got choking happening in lots of places here. I'll come a bit closer. So I can make it a bit louder. Right. Yeah, people are saying it's a little bit soft, so I'll just bring up the level on the desktop audio.
This one?
Yeah.
A little bit more.
Thanks.
Cool. I'm going to try and get this going because we have, I think, 6 different tests that are worth just demonstrating different things. I think it's nice to talk about our practice, the experimental thing. And
this is an experimental workshop. It's not a final thing.
And I'm going to put the title screen while I fix
the other thing about this was the process that I went through with the performers is that because of social distancing, it was a one-on-one situation in my studio. So I was physically somewhere else, and I shot those sequences and recorded the sound in a different place, and then they were uploaded via the net to this studio here where they were put together. So it was kind of an exercise in how you would create something remotely. Yeah, so your Oculus, oh yeah, you're on now. Yeah. So there's another work that came together very quickly in the last couple of days. Well, another experiment, which is with the Sydney poet, performance poet Amanda Stewart, and I think there's a picture of Amanda. Some of you may have heard of Amanda. I'll just answer that question of Chris's. Yeah, there's Amanda, Adrian Lure photo. So Amanda is in isolation, not because she's unwell, but she just has to be. So she performed a totally abstract sound little piece in her house, and it's been moving around a room in her place, and Josh has reproduced that here, so that if you have even a pair of headphones or a headset on, you will hear the space. You'll hear her voice moving in the space.
Just to that question, is it a special mic? Was that in particular about the ambisonic recording, the spatialized recording? The H2N actually does support ambisonic recording, so you can record a spatialized soundscape. It will spit out 4 channels, and you can put it into Premiere or a few other tools, and then get it into YouTube, for example, supports listening to ambisonic soundscapes. As you look around in a headset or with your phone, with your headphones on, you can hear the sound moving around. Works quite
So
well.
for those who this sounds like jargon, ambisonic is we have mono, we have stereo, and we have ambisonic. And ambisonic is a way of representing the three-dimensional space in sound, and then it can be decoded or tracked in different kinds of ways. And it's kind of a new audio format. And actually, it's been around since the 1970s. A British mathematician, Michael Getson, wrote the original papers on ambisonic sound, and it's and really kind of suddenly now in the last couple of years it's come to fruition in terms of what it possibly do. The last film I made, I actually recorded all of the train atmospheres, which are kind of important in the work, in ambisonically, so they're recorded in surround.
And you could argue that one of the reasons why ambisonic has become so much more used in the last few years is because of VR headsets.
Yeah.
Which actually speaks a lot to the potential for spatialized sound that VR headsets give you. I think we're good to go with this. I also have a video of the process of creating the tracking for Amanda's thing.
Yeah. Like we've got a quarter of an hour left, but if we go over time, I guess that's okay.
Okay, so into this Unity view, let's see.
So Amanda Stewart did a couple of other poems, pieces that were used text, but she didn't want that to be on YouTube because technically it belongs to Mr. Zuckerberg. So we will play one of the more abstract thing that she did, and she did this from home yesterday.
So,
the desktop audio is there. Yeah. The Oculus is not. No. So. So this you are hearing now just me running around in the space, testing out location. If you have headsets on, you will hear the if you have headset or headphones on, you will hear the. Is that correct, Josh? Yeah, you will hear the spatialization. You'll hear me walking around and making these sounds. We've just jumped to the next thing. This is tracking a microphone that I'm speaking into. That little green.
Is there anybody else outside?
Box is basically where the microphone was.
We know by now. I'm sure you're right.
But
you can't be too sure.
So the previous one, it's a fixed. The microphones is an ambisonic microphone in a fixed place, and I'm running around it, making sounds. And in this one, the microphone is being tracked through the space, and I'm holding the microphone and moving around the space, and that's being recorded as in 3 dimensions, and then it's being reproduced with the sounds that were recorded at the time. I hope that makes sense.
You can't leave all this behind. You know that.
All right, so this is our test of our spatialized sound. So we
the next one is Josh just said something to me. Josh is talking, but you can't hear.
Where it is. And what we're doing is we have a little tracking device. And
okay. Oh, okay. This is back to the original thing, and this is just a test of what it would be like with a group of people in this space, in this performance space, in this 360 degrees. Your mic's not working, Joss, but yeah. And the reason why, what are you saying? I'll have to translate through. Okay, and this is Amanda's, Stuart's. So whack your headsets on.
Okay, so
Okay, we
this
think
is us
that's
giving you
the
a
end.
demonstration of recording with.
Okay, so Josh is coming back up from the space.
Yeah, sorry, the Oculus microphone in some of the negotiation of the connection between the Oculus and the computer, that thing turned off, so it was sort of without a voice for a little bit. That final example was just a binaural recording, which is kind of a nice effect that we don't need to dwell too much on. I did want to chat a little bit about that test of the crowd. One element of that sort of perception of 3D depth is more cues than just the main sort of mechanical way that we can tell, in theory, how far apart away things are, is by triangulating between where it is in one eye and the other, in a field of vision. But there's also a whole heap of cues that you do around lighting and shapes and things like that.
But doesn't our brain do that all the time when we walk into a room? It's doing that.
Yeah. So my concern a little bit with the isolation of the characters was that there wouldn't be so much of those set of cues around relative distance. So those tests that we were doing with the crowd was sort of playing with something where actually a few lessons that we got out of that was how easy it is to comp the VR 180 shots. So it wasn't totally immediately obvious. It probably it might have been maybe it should have been obvious, but the way that projection of a 360 view is kind of wrapped into an image, sort of like if you take a picture of the globe and unwrap it, the way that the top and the bottom is much wider than it should be to fit around that shape. So that's how the image forms when it's recorded to the camera. And so it wasn't totally obvious whether we could grab people from one place and move them left and right or effectively around the circle. It was very, very seemingly impossible to move people further back or further or closer, just because it's not something that's easy to do. But comping people in, so taking one person from over there and sort of moving them so they're sitting at different points around the circle, worked out quite well.
Yeah.
Nice to
It's
do.
it's amazing when when you've got the headset on and you're surrounded by a crowd of people. You know, it's like, whoa.
They're not too threatening, but it's still quite full on.
Yeah, it's that experiment worked. And there's an interesting question about where the eye line, should the camera be the height above, below, or this, because everyone's a different height. So
where is that sheet of paper? I'd love to go through some of those points. That was one of the things that we were sort of making a note to talk about, is the sort of normative assumptions of the fictional observer and also the person who's in that space wearing the headset. So, as John was saying, where the eye line is for.
So we have this. It doesn't make a lot of sense, I don't know, to people watching, but when you have the headset on, everybody's looking straight into your eyes. But to do that means that everyone is on a different level in a sense, because everyone is a different height.
Yeah.
So directly into your eyes. That's what I mean.
Yeah, at the same height.
But that's okay, because we're not doing realism here. So yeah.
The thing that it did mean was that the tall people looked shorter in comparison to the short people, I suppose. It's kind of funny. I did want to show as well, so that project with Amanda working with in isolation, it was an interesting way of working. So I use photogrammetry for a lot of the things that I do. So photogrammetry is this 3D reconstruction process using images. And as well as being able to build a model of something, it figures out where the camera is, where those photos were taken. So what you can do is take a video with it and then run through that process, and it will tell you position and direction the camera, or effectively the camera was looking for every single frame of the video. So you can replay motion through a scene using that. I have a couple of little videos of that process. So what that meant was that Amanda could sit at home, find a appropriate space to work within, and send me a few reference images to build that initial model of the space, and then a video just taken on her phone. Let me cue this up. Just a video taken on her phone with the audio
Actually, it wasn't
recorded.
a phone. It was a little camera.
Yeah, so in theory, the phone would have
been better.
A little bit. The camera ended up trying to be too clever and shifting focus and things in the midst of it, which was a bit of problematic. But I'll just show you. So this is our reconstruction of the space that she was in. A lot of these sections of white wall it doesn't get, just because there's not very much points that it can figure the world out with. But got a fair number of reference points that it's figured out within that space. Some things work better than others. And then
looks like a VR painting.
And then this is the one. Okay, this is another reconstruction, a little bit more details. And then here's the turning on the camera points. This is an initial test. You can see all those blue points are the position and direction of the camera. So from those, you can just replay basically the motion of the camera through the space.
Which she was also recording the sound into, which you heard, which was the sounds.
So because we had the audio and those sort of position information, we can replay that through space. That worked quite well without having to be there at all done totally remotely. It's quite nice.
I just answered Miguel's question. Yes, depth of field is a core issue, and that's what I wanted to explore in these this workshop. But what I really found is that we're not in reality. We're in VR space, and we're looking at the performer, and that kind of overrides a lot of those things. For me, anyway. I don't know about other people, but that's kind of where our focus is. So weird kind of depth of field things, because I'm not trying to be naturalistic and put people in a real space or in a room or something like that. Doesn't really bug me, because I'm not trying to do that. So
it is interesting. There's a big difference. What people are mostly used to in terms of 360 video is just flat, so not stereoscopic. It's just like being inside a big dome.
This is stereoscopic.
Basically. And the first one that I saw, the first footage that I saw was actually I was consulting on a project, university tour that they were doing in VR, and they had an Instapro camera that captured and stitched depth information. And when I first saw that was pretty amazing to see the difference between just that sort of flat image and the depth. To think about depth of field, because I normally work, it's kind of funny working with John and working in this sort of 360 context. I'm very used to working in 6 degrees of freedom, where you can move around and look around in any direction, and all of the things that you're looking at are being represented as 3D objects. So one thing is over here, one thing is over here. We didn't really get a chance to talk about that sort of kind of point of difficulty with a headset and an approach which is fundamentally room scale, moving around 6 degrees of freedom, and then the video is just 3 degrees of freedom, where you're looking changes. So you can see what we did to try and get around that with these little hot spots that you sort of tune into, and then go into a space where you're navigating based on something which is implicitly spatial, the sound, and you're finding these points and then going to them, and then you sort of arrive in this inside the video. Depth of field, I mean, you imagine if you had, just thinking going forward, VR headsets are building in eye tracking, so you can tell where someone's looking. you can either sort of try and figure out, artificial intelligence, image processing to figure out how actually you don't have to do, you can use something like photogrammetry to work out how close things are in the scene, and then you can fake the depth of field. You can fake focusing based on where people are looking with that. Or get a light field camera with 6 lenses. That could be a future of capturing more 3D information for doing depth of field as well. That stuff, it's interesting to think about how even though these images are in theory representing depth information, they're still flat because of a whole bunch of different things, including depth of. Yes.
Whereas I'm kind of thinking that what the performers are doing and the content of it kind of overrides the kind of clunkiness of things. Maybe that's a debate.
There's there's a lot of interest. I mean, like, you can watch, the fact that we can happily sit and watch a black and white movie shows that.
And maybe a black and white movie is superior in some ways because the audience has to fill in the missing bits, you know, and that's why it's such a beautiful experience, because you've got to work, and that's maybe why that's sort of the approach I took in this, is taking information away, not including all.
I thought that maybe we would go through, we've done it in the past, our just ideas document as well, if you're happy to do that. This one here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I just thought I'd talk through some of our initial so we actually were thinking about the possibility of doing volumetric, sort of using VR cameras for volumetric. And that would be, fairly trivial actually, taking the depth information from the VR camera and using it to build some interesting volumetric motion tracked sort of thing. A few different experiments and bits and pieces. This is us figuring out. Also, another thing that we haven't really gone into detail with is just the workflow, just dealing with what the camera outputs, figuring out the best settings for it. I spent many hours building scripts for Premiere that would nearly instantaneous, much longer than probably it saved me time for. But these things, you hit the button and it goes through and
this is really basically
around.
Just a workflow experiment. And we still haven't quite got there, but that's part of the whole thing, is finding a workflow, so then you could concentrate on the ideas and what the work is actually about, so that everything else just falls away and technically falls into place. That would be the most beautiful thing.
Yeah,
because some kind of my work method for this is not 100% there yet. You would get a better result if to go another step, but we know certain kind of work methods that they work in certain kind of ways. That's the kind of the beauty of doing something like this, is to work out these workflows and work out these working methods.
I wonder I'm always interested in the ethics of the experience. So one thing that I was kind of interested in was, or potentially concerned in, whether John was trying to torture the audience.
No, definitely
through this
not.
experience. And it was very interesting going to this Electric Dreams, I think it was called, a conference on immersive storytelling in Adelaide just before the lockdown, and a lot of people were talking about an awareness of, given that it's a immersive technology, thinking through where you are taking people and sort of taking seriously that idea of presence and what emotionally that experience would be like to be thrown into a certain experience or exposed to certain things. I always think that's an interesting question. We're doing quite well for that. I've got some call outs to do. I'll just look at my checklist again with questions of, okay, what was it? I think we've gone through, talked about some of our 3D spatial sound recording experiments, some of the experiments with using the camera in different ways. What do you reckon to these questions? Do you have anything that these are, what, how, why now, in the context
I think that's
of
kind
it?
of answered.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Well, we can take the top.
Yeah. We're just going to show you the actual camera.
Yeah, because it's pretty dinky.
That's
There
it.
it is.
And it's not really high tech in a way. So yeah, it's got a left and a right eye in a sense. The images that we're getting out of it, part of it for me isn't always an experiment in looks. Every work that I attempt to do is kind of like a different kind of look. And this is what kind of look could you get out of this technology? And what it's doing is it's actually it's kind of simplifying the image too, because it's lacking a lot of information because of the codec, etc., etc. So it's getting the figures look kind of interesting because they're kind of almost a little bit artificial. Yeah, and that's kind of something that's working for me. It's not trying to reproduce reality exactly. I'm not trying to make a simulacrum of reality. That's a waste of time.
And I think we'll have to wait to showcase the install context. So the reason why I built this big sort of circular
Insta360,
Yep.
yes.
Evo, this one, it's got a little feature where you can sort of, it's actually taken another Insta360 camera, the One or the 1X, I think either one of those, which is a 360 camera, and they just took the guts out, and so what you can do is twist it to be a 360 camera, you lock it and unlock it,
Monoscopic.
and then or choose to have a stereo VR 180 camera. So that's kind of a cute bit of kit. If you didn't have a 360 camera, I suppose it would make sense to use it occasionally. I haven't really looked at what the output for 360 is, but this install that we did, about a 4-meter diameter space. One reason why I wanted to do that was just to sort of break that. What would you say, that that idea of VR works only existing within the headset, where you're like, okay, you can ignore everything else. The experience starts when you put on the headset and everything gets beamed into your eyes and ears. I kind of wanted to give some focus to the staging of the experience, especially because it's taking place in quite a an particularly staged, weirdly artificial, fictional sort of, this void that you're creating has got a weird sort of tone to it.
So the void is something that you create your space in.
Yeah.
So it's up to the audience to fill that in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We don't have to. So I take issue with a lot of computer animation stuff that tries to fill in everything, that fills in everything, that tells us everything. Maybe the more interesting thing is if we fill it in ourselves.
Yeah. Well, so this is that opportunity. And actually, I think in the last one with Louise Zhang, the last live stream with the artist Louise Zhang, I was talking about, in that context of rendering out these environments, it's very hard to keep things to the imagination, because you have to, in all directions, everything that is visible is something that you've had to make some sort of decision about what it looks like. You can maybe put fog, with that one, even if you make fog or try and do those sort of atmospheric effects that are a way of creating some gap between knowledge and of what's there, your fog will look terrible maybe, and then that will be another thing that people are reading in a particular way. So it's interesting to use that void as a way of not.
That's your imagination.
Cool. Do we have any questions? We're sort of coming to time now. I think we've gone through. I'd like to thank Warren Armstrong for lending me the binaural head. Another good bit of kit. Yeah, another amazing looking bit of kit as well. Let's see our co-pilot to the is he visible? There he is. And yep, all the actors, everyone else involved, if you've done your call out.
Yes, Gideon, Claire, Polly, Anna, and And Meg.
And
Amanda, of course.
Yep, absolutely. And if there's no questions, no one's got anything else that they want to jump into, there'll be some documentation of the install space with our documentation video that we'll sort of put out later.
And next week, hopefully, some of the performers will come and actually put a headset on and actually experience the work.
Yeah, so it's before we take this down. It seems like a little bit of a waste for 2 weeks, so we're going to leave it up for a few extra days and give people the opportunity to come and experience the VR in that context. Totally within the regulations of social distancing, apparently. So, good. Thank you, John, for
thank you.
for
thank
working
you for
with
inviting me.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and it's been really interesting. I don't come from a film background, working with actors, any of that sort of the performance part of things. It was really interesting seeing you seeing the really good. Okay, so we're going to stop the stream. It's going to be archived. There's going to be another live stream, I think, in about 2 weeks. Your ear out for the announcement of that. Thanks, Claire. Yep, that was a pleasure having everyone here. Thanks for joining us. And yep, if there's nothing else, say goodbye. Thank you for joining us on this evening, and cheers.
Yep. Good evening.